Right. We are going live now. Good afternoon and welcome to the DBA webinar. Our title today is Slam Dunk, Making the Most of Your Summer Clerk Experience. Our speakers today are Dennis Siaw-Lattey, Honorable Martin Hoffman, Saba Syed, Amy Stewart, and Maia Bartee. My name is Yedinia, and I'll be your session organizer today. If you are new to Zoom, you can open the navigation menu located at the top or the bottom of your screen. You can post questions in the Q&A box or make comments in the chat box. Have a pen and paper handy. I'll post the course number towards the end of this presentation, and it will also be announced. Thank you, and now I hand this over to Amy.
Thank you, Yedinia. Hey everyone, this is Amy Stewart from Stewart Law Group, and we've got a great panel today. We are very hopeful that we have a lot of law students on this webinar, a lot of summer clerks, because we are about to give you the skinny on how you can basically knock it out of the park this summer and make a wonderful first impression with the law firms, especially virtually, which is where we are right now. And so I'm going to go through introductions of our panel, and then we're going to dive right into what we hope is going to be very practical advice for you to basically get off this webinar and then go back to work and put this in play immediately. So we're going to start with Judge Hoffman. And I asked Judge Hoffman to send me a short bio. I'm going to let y'all, you know, here it is. Judge Hoffman.
You don't have to read the whole thing.
Well, I mean, you're a judge, so it's like, where do I really cut it? So I'm gonna give everyone the full flavor here. So Judge Hoffman was elected in November 2006 to the 68th District Court. This court specializes in civil jurisdiction. In 2008, Judge Hoffman was named the Trial Judge of the Year by the Dallas chapter of the American Board of Trial Advocates. In 2017, Judge Hoffman was named the Outstanding Jurist by the Dallas Women Lawyers Association. He has been elected 4 times by the 11,000 members of the Dallas Bar, the Dallas Board of Directors. Judge Hoffman has been honored with the Outstanding Trial Judge Award in 2013 by the Texas Attorney Mediator Coalition for his work with foreclosure mediation legislation. In 2012, Judge Hoffman was honored with the Outstanding Mentor Award by both the Texas Young Lawyers Association and the Dallas Association of Young Lawyers. In 2016, he was awarded the Honorable Cleo R. Steele Committed Mentor Award by J.L. Turner Legal Association. He was also selected by his peers at the George Allen Courthouse to serve as the presiding judge of
Amy, you don't have to do any more. That's enough.
I'm glad, because I mean, okay, are we good? So before then, you guys, he knows he was practicing as a civil litigator for 13 years before he got up on the bench. So everyone welcome Judge Hoffman. So next, Dennis Siaw-Lattey is a commercial litigator at Munsch, Hardt, and he graduated from Texas Christian University, Frogs, and with an undergraduate degree, and earned his law degree from the University of Houston Cougars 2012. As a law student, Dennis clerked with the Civil Division of the United States Attorney's Office in Dallas and with Travelers Insurance. Dennis also interned for the Honorable Martin Hoffman Connection and the 68th District Court. He began his practice defending insurance companies in personal injury cases before transitioning to commercial trial work. He has been practicing for 8 years. He has had first and second year trial experience in commercial and personal injury matters. He currently represents individuals, small businesses, as well as Fortune 500 companies in state and federal court disputes all over the country. Dennis is very active in the Dallas Bar Association and is currently a member of the Dallas Association of Young Lawyers Foundation Board of Trustees. Let's let Dennis know that we're happy that he's here with us. Now, Maia Bartee is a recent graduate. She is tired because she is studying like crazy for that Texas Bar exam. She is a recent graduate from UNT Dallas College of Law, where she graduated in the top 10% of her class. As a law student, she interned with Toyota, with the Honorable Kimberly Priest Johnson for the Eastern District of Texas, Winston and Strawn, and Bowman and Brook. Maia will start her legal career with Bowman and Brook after sitting for the Texas bar in July. Welcome, Maia, and good luck with that bar exam. And then last, but certainly not least, Saba Syed practices at Nunnally. She works in the litigation and the appellate section. She is determined and a driven attorney who excels in the courtroom and defends courtroom victories on appeal. She's very important. Saba has represented clients in civil litigation matters across multiple industries, including real estate, investment trust, self-storage, retailers, construction suppliers, construction subcontractors, interior construction designers, commercial landlords, and event and industry planners. So let's welcome Saba. Okay, so we're getting right into it. This is about practical skills. So I want to start with Judge Hoffman. I don't think when you're a young lawyer, you realize how small the Dallas legal market is. So kind of talk to us a little bit about that and the importance of reputations.
So that's absolutely true. Although we have over, I think it's 15,000 lawyers in Dallas County, the area you practice within is going to be a much smaller. Civil is probably the largest, but it's going to be a small universe. So you're going to see the same lawyers again and again. Your classmates you will see during the course of your legal practice, many of them, and you start to develop a reputation as soon as you start law school, and even more importantly, as soon as you do a clerkship. So I'll just kind of talk to you from the standpoint of being a judicial intern and practicing in front of a court. One of the hardest things I think for students kind of at this level is for a lot of students, it's their first time to really work in a professional environment, and the expectations of what you see in school versus the expectations of what you see in the professional world can be somewhat different. And so certain things that I think you really got to think about. It's absolutely true that judges talk. It's absolutely true that attorneys talk. You start to develop a reputation, and you don't want that reputation to be a bad reputation. And so let me tell you some things that, some things are obvious. You don't want to get drunk at a party. I heard about a law clerk at a law firm here in town who, in the middle of a party, decided to urinate in a plant because he was really drunk in the middle of the front area of the law firm. That clerk did not get an offer with that firm. You don't want to do obvious things like that. But some things that may be a little less obvious is realize that you only have, especially we're about to have, I think, a really tough job market. You're only going to have a few chances to make a good impression. So I'll give you what I think is a good example, hopefully, of something you may not think about since someone maybe didn't work in a professional environment. That's something that happened recently with one of my interns. I had an intern who agreed to intern for me last summer. I gladly gave her an internship, but then she backed out of the internship because she got a paid position, which is okay. It's not the best practices, but that's okay. That does happen. Then she asked to intern for me this summer, and I, at first was a little reluctant because she backed out before, but she really pressed it. So I said, okay, you can intern for me this summer. And then the very first project she ever signed up for, she backed out of. And so you've got to realize that you've got to think about, okay, and maybe she had a good reason to back out of her first internship. She may have had a good reason to back out of the first project, but you start to develop a reputation if you continuously do that type of stuff. And you don't want, when a judge or a senior partner, and I'd love to hear other people's thoughts on this, you don't want them, as soon as they think of you, Bob, this person's name isn't Bob, but Bob, yeah, you really can't rely on Bob, because if you give Bob something that they're not going to do it, or they're going to back out of it, they're not going to keep their commitments. And so you have one shot, but to go again and again and again, I don't think this person's a bad person, but they haven't thought about how that may be perceived. And so just be aware that that type of behavior can help to start to develop a reputation.
Yeah, thank you. So Dennis, tell us from your perspective as a young lawyer, you're 8 years in now, but go back in time about reputations and what you learned early on.
Trust is a big thing with attorneys. And We tend to be rigid people, and we tend to be rigid people in the way that we learn about people, their characteristics, what we can rely on, what we cannot rely on. And because we have so much going on, we take that snapshot, and that's what we use for as long as we know the person, because we don't have time to come back and relearn your second and third impressions. You've got that first shot, and you've got to show what you got that first time around. I'm reminded of this just about 2 or 3 times every day in our firm. About 2 or 3 times a day, we'll get an email, and it'll simply be titled Intel. And it will be asking for what anyone in the firm, all 100 and something attorneys, what you know about a certain attorney, a certain mediator, a certain judge. And then that person who has something that they're going to do, a case against this attorney or a case in front of this judge, will get feedback from every attorney. And what you have to realize is that attorney, those attorneys who are replying, are simply taking a snapshot from one experience with this attorney or with this judge or with this mediator, and they're sharing it to the firm, and the next person is taking it, and that is their snapshot that they take with them. That's your reputation being built upon itself. And so you really don't have that many chances to build upon it if you make mistakes with how you present yourself the very first time. Because we take that, if I send out that email, it's because I've got a lot going on, and I need my colleagues who are trust to tell me everything they know about you. Now, they haven't spent their entire careers with you. They've taken that one time you worked with them, and it may be a time where you drop the ball, and they're going to share that with me, and that's what I'm going to take, and that's going to be my impression of you. And that happens across firms all over the city. And so you really have to understand that as big as it is, the things that you do, and it starts from the very first day of your career. You show up at a law firm as a clerk, and at the end of the summer, you leave with 2 or 3 items on the table that you didn't complete. That's an impression that you've left, and the person that felt shorted will have no choice but to share that impression with someone who asks about you, and that's what gets carried across. And so that's what makes it a small community. It's not about the number, it's about the impressions that you make and how quickly that can be shared across firms and across businesses, and it's really hard to go back and fix it.
Yeah, Saba, I tell people all the time that you think you've left high school, but you never leave high school. Like, I mean, the rumors about you, and no one is asking anyone to be perfect. So I want to be clear to everyone that's listening. No one's saying you can't make mistakes, because you have to fail to succeed. Everyone will tell you that. But you don't want to self-sabotage. So Saba, tell us a little bit about how important your reputation is. You've done an amazing job in a short amount of time. Of when we, sought people for this, I think 4 or 5 people mentioned your name. So first of all, kudos to that. But can you talk a little bit about the importance of reputation?
So I think with reputation, it starts from the beginning. And I personally believe your most valuable network are your classmates, who you're with right now, because nowhere else are you going to have the opportunity to have people really get to know you, and for you to really get to know other people. And when I say get to know people, what I mean is being kind, being respectful, having a good work ethic. It's not complicated. You don't need to be top of your class or make straight A's to be considered a good, honest person who's reliable. And the reason why I think your law school network is an example of it's a small world is the fact that I have, in just my few years of practice, seen so many resumes of my own classmates come in front of me, and I take a look at them and I remember how they were in law school. And they don't necessarily have to be my best friend, and they don't necessarily have to be someone I'd want to go on a ski trip with. But if I remember that they were nice, that they were respectful, that they did the reading, that they were a hard worker, I'm going to put a recommendation for them. But if I remember that they caused drama, they were gossipy, they had a lot of negative things to say about other people, then I'm going to remember that too, and it's going to factor into my recommendation. So you'll be surprised at how much your law school network is going to make and break your career. So be good to each other, because that has honestly helped make my career.
Yeah, thank you for that. So Maia, when Judge Hoffman and I decided to do this, I basically twisted your arm and I said, yeah, I know, but I just need an hour so that people can learn from your experience, because reputation has, I mean, your reputation amongst from coming from the DAP Direct program has been amazing and helped you. So tell us a little bit about, again, as we close this topic, how important your reputation is.
Reputation is really critical, especially in a law firm, I think, because you're not going to necessarily have the opportunity to work for every single, person that works there. You're not going to be able to sit necessarily in front of the people that are going to make the decisions as to whether or not they're going to bring you back for another summer or, inevitably hire you. And so really, you have to make sure that when you have that opportunity to speak to that person, even if it's a good morning as you're walking past their office, or saying yes when they ask you to go to lunch, even though you may be swamped, that's important. It's critical, because when they're sitting at the table and they're making a decision, do we want to bring this person back? You want them to be able to say, well, I didn't necessarily get to work with her, but everything that I've heard about her, says that yes, this is the type of person that would work well here. So you never know who is making decisions about you. You never know who is talking to other people about you. I've met several people in the law community in Dallas that come up to me and they're like, oh, we've heard about you. And I have no idea who they are, but they have heard about me through somebody else that I may have experienced and hopefully get given a great reputation to. So your reputation is critical, because when decisions are being made, you don't want them to rely on somebody's negative opinion about you.
Yeah, I have a 15-year-old daughter, and I tell her all the time, the world is small, so you have to be on your best behavior at all times, because exactly what you're talking about. So, Dennis, let's talk about expectations. What is your understanding of, the expectations of a law student that's completed their first year of law school, and then the law student that's completed their second year of law school when they come into the firm environment? What is the firm expecting from them?
I think it's a couple of things. First, it's an attitude of being willing to learn. We were in law school once. We know what you were taught in law school. We know what law school prepares you for. And we know that when you get to a law firm, there are certain different things that you haven't been prepared to do from law school. And so that's fine. But you have to show up with an attitude of being prepared and willing to learn. For example, when I have an assignment for you and I call you into my office, show up with a pen and paper, or show up with your laptop if we've assigned you one, ready to take notes. That shows me, first off, you're ready to take down. Don't be the waiter that showed up wanting to learn the entire table's order without writing it down. I don't trust that. I want you to be ready to write it down. And so that's my first impression of your willingness to learn. As I'm describing to you what the project is, be willing and humble enough to identify where you have a misunderstanding or have not yet acquired the knowledge that I need for you to accomplish what I'm asking you to do. Ask me questions right then and there. Stop me and say, will you explain this again? I'm perfectly okay doing that, because I understand who you are. Don't misrepresent yourself to me by not asking questions as I'm giving you the assignment. And then you go back and don't ask questions during the time when you're supposed to be completing it. And then you come back and it's not done correctly when there was plenty of opportunity for us to interact and build up your knowledge on it. So that's just an attitude thing. A couple of things that I would say: you're going to be trusted with research and writing. When it comes to research, if I've given you a research assignment, what I expect from a first or second year is for you to have reasonable knowledge of what the resources are out there, what the sources are, statutes, case law. How do you find these things? I want you to have a reasonable knowledge of that, because when I get the first impression of your work, when you start asking me questions as you're working on it, I want to know what you've looked at, where you thought it would be, so that I can help you by suggesting other places you can look. I don't want you to come back and tell me, well, I didn't find it. It wasn't there. Not having really exhausted reasonable resources. When I say reasonable resources, when I'm asking you a real estate question and you've never looked into property code, I'm going to have some questions as to why you haven't at least checked out the property code. If you've looked in that place, and I can help you find other resources to better answer the question. And if you write a memo, show the person that you've looked at these resources. Answer the question on both sides. If I ask you a question and it's going to be difficult for me to win with what I'm asking, show me why. Show me the other side. Don't just tell me that I couldn't answer the question. You're going to lose. I don't want to hear that. I understand I may lose. I understand I may lose, but tell me why, and tell me what you're seeing on the other side so that we can have a discussion, because through that I can tell you, show you how to think about the problem the way that I'm thinking about the problem. When it comes to writing, we don't expect you to show up being proficient, top 10-year attorney, 15-year attorney type of writers. If you are, by all means, show it. But if you show up as a reasonably trained first or second year law student, there are certain things within your control. And our expectation is that spelling and grammar are within your control, and you will show up having written work product that I can look at and not have to correct basic spelling and grammar and organization and incomplete sentences. Those are just practical things that you have that control within your hands. So for you to bring me a work product that is void of those things shows me, one, you put in effort and you knew that that was within your control. Even if you're not the best writer in the world, you didn't bring me a work product that I had to go back and just, if I have to copy your, if I have to fix your spelling, I have way more questions about the entire project, because I think, well, if that wasn't done well, I don't know if you looked at all the sources. I'm going to show up in front of a judge and call out this case, and there's going to be citations that you missed and you didn't shepherdize. And now I'm questioning beyond what's just on the face of the assignment. So you've lowered your trust in my eyes a little bit. And so those are things within your control. And it just says something about you when you take care of those things right off the bat. And that's something that a first and second year law student should be able to do.
Got it. And before we move over to Judge Hoffman, Saba, tell us your perspective on that as well from working at a firm.
So actually broke it down, and I think I got it. So the first thing that I think Dennis hit on perfectly was ask questions. You've got to ask questions. And when I was a young intern and clerk and associate, I was so scared to ask questions because I didn't want to reveal that I didn't understand the issue. And I thought I could go back to my desk and figure it out. Mm-hmm. It's important to just be honest, because everyone understands that you're new to this. And if you're honest and if you start from that understanding, your work and your job is going to be so much easier. So ask questions and then ask for forms. If they've done this assignment before, ask them, have you done a case like this before? Is there a client matter number I can look at where you've done this, something like this before? Is there a project where you recommend I look at? Because a lot of times they have handled something like this before. Maybe it's in the back of their head that there is something that they want you to look at, and they don't know the entire universe of documents you're going to look at to start your work. So it's better to just ask them, because everyone's busy. And if you can pose the questions first, it's going to save you a lot of time. The second thing is that when you come to crossroads on project, ask questions. If you have an area of the law and you don't know which way to go and ask questions. And that way you kind of avoid periodically interrupting the attorney with numerous questions. If you go at the crossroad section, or if you go with a list of questions at one time, you can save time and also get your questions answered. The third thing, check the law. It's really easy with O'Connor's, but you can also do it with the statutes. And then also if you're using some search engines, go ahead and use that. If you're gonna do searches, I'd recommend what you do what Dennis said, which is check everything, but keep a list of what you did to search. If you checked the statutes, mark it off your list. If you've checked Google Scholar and Westlaw, write down what search engines you use, which terms did you use? And if you write down which terms you use, maybe the attorney can recommend, well, did you check this word, or did you think about this word? And then that way you've kept everything organized, because researching needs to stay organized to be effective. Fourth thing, proof your work. And then the last thing is keep me updated. Sometimes things take longer than you think they will, but as long as you let me know how you are on this project, or you let me know, look, this is taking me a lot longer, this law is a lot more complicated than I thought, then at least I can know what's going on and I can assist if I need to, or if we need to bring someone else, we can do that too. But this is a teamwork, this is a collaborative effort. And if I don't know what's going on, then we can't work together as a team to get this done.
Very good. I hear a lot of themes about communication. Judge Hoffman, what do you have to add for clerks that are actually working for judges?
So I was thinking about this as Dennis was talking, and it kind of struck me that I hadn't thought about this before, is that judicial internships, especially for state court judges, are a little bit different than, say, what you see with law firms or students who are still in law school or still in an academic institution. You know, when you're dealing with a professor, your professor is there to teach you. That's their job. They have a vested interest in you learning. The same with law firms. They've hired you and hopefully to someday come and work for you and to train you. They have a vested interest in training you. Judges, it's a little bit different. Most judges, including myself, we want you to do well because we're hopefully good people and we care about that, but we don't have that same vested interest. And so judges handle judicial internships very, very differently depending on how much time or how much passion they have in the project. For me in particular, I try to set as clear as expectation as possible. I tell them exactly how the program works. I tell them, you know, there's a writing requirement that's extremely important. I try to set, you know, forth as much guidance as possible. But at times, sometimes you're just so busy, the judge can't do all of the things that they hope that they can do with you. Also understand for every judge is going to be different. As I said, for me, I tend to have a very large program that's very, try to be as structured as possible. Some judges don't have very any interns. They don't see this as being essential to what they're doing. And so they may not give as clear as expectations. Always be willing to ask if your current judicial intern who's not working for me, or even if you're working for me and you don't feel like you know your expectations, always feel free to ask them, but make sure you ask them at the appropriate time. Running a court, especially now, but really at any time, is very, very difficult. And they're really having to do this in times when they're not doing their central component, or central focus, which is their is running their court. And so I think that you need to know what your judge expects from the very beginning. Some judges, we have a lot of new judges, maybe haven't thought through all of the issues. So sometimes they may set up policies that they hadn't thought about. And even I've had over 300 interns. I've had, I do interns all through the year as well as a very robust class during the summer. Even I think of sometimes like, hey, wow, that I could do this a different way. So if there's a suggestion that you think would be helpful, ask it, you know, suggest it in a very polite way, but I think that that's okay as well. But just understand that I think sometimes interns think that the judge is like their professor, and they really are doing this as kind of a side gig as opposed to what their central focus is. And so, but always make sure that you understand the expectations of the judge.
So I'm going to stick with you, Judge Hoffman. Let's talk about how the pandemic and this virtual world we're in has kind of changed the experience. Number one, let's talk about what you're doing for your interns. And then I'm a very optimistic person. So what are some positives that have come from us having to learn how to do it this way?
I will tell you, when this all started, I wasn't, and even though I'm a passionate believer in the judicial intern program, I really wondered if this would work because it's such a change in a lot of ways. I hope the interns feel this way as well. I feel that it's actually gone pretty well. I've changed some of the focus. A lot of what we do as civil district judges is trying jury trials. Typically, that's probably 50 to 70% of what I do every week. And I don't do that anymore. We can't do civil jury trials right now, and that's not going to come back, I don't think, anytime in the immediate future. And so the interns have lost out on that, unfortunately, and there's no way to get around it. But we continue to have hearings. I have them attend all of my Zoom hearings. Pretty much all of my hearings are on Zoom, and they watch all of those. We have bench trials. They got to see their first full day bench trial the other day. That was very interesting. And they also, it has allowed me, and not every judge is going to do this, so I'm not saying that, or even every judge may not think this is a good idea, but I try to get them to have as many networking opportunities as possible. And I actually have more time to do that. Before, I could just do that during lunch when I was running to and from a jury trial. Now I set up coffees. Dennis, right after this, is going to be meeting with all my interns to talk to them about, you know, his career as a judicial intern and how he's evolved. Amy, yesterday we met to talk about the DAP program. And it's stuff that I wouldn't have been able to do usually because I'd be in jury trial that I'm able to do now. Some things that I would really be careful of with, and this is always kind of true, the first one, but it's even more so true, being prompt as an attorney and being prompt as a judicial intern are both extremely important. Understand that a lot of judges, that we're new to this process of using this type of technology. So if you show up 5 minutes late to a hearing, we may be in the middle of trying to fix some technology issue and it may not remember to let you in or to let you into the hearing. You want to be there 5 minutes in advance of whatever you're doing with the judge, so that as soon as the judge lets everyone in, you don't want to be a burden or an inconvenience to the judge because they're trying to deal with a lot of other stuff. So always be there early. And another thing that I hadn't really thought about, but has come up in my judicial internship, is in a live internship, when you're in a courtroom, you can hide a little bit. You can be in the back of the courtroom. You can, you know, you're not in the focus. People don't always see you. But when you're a judicial intern on Zoom, people can see your face and they can see if you're paying attention. I have an intern right now. I wish he could teach all law students. He does a great job. His name is Samir Asani, and he always looks incredibly interested. He's always sitting up like this, and he's always, I mean, he looks like a lawyer. He comes off as being interested, engaged. He may be daydreaming the whole time. I don't know. I hope not, but he looks interested. I've had a couple other interns who don't always seem as interested. Realize that people can see you, and the attorneys will go, "Oh wow, why was that intern so bored? Looked so bored through my entire presentation." You're developing a reputation just by what you're presenting out there. Another thing that I will say is that generally you should, in my opinion, you should be on screen. You should have your video on at all times, but be muted when you're watching courtroom proceedings. If you're asked to speak, you should unmute. Because I think a lot of people are going to wonder, like, well, why don't they have their video on? Are they really, you know, playing with their dog, or, you know, doing the dishes, or are they really paying attention if you're not actually, if your video isn't on? Now, sometimes for technology reasons, you have to turn the video off if there's some bad internet feed. But I think it's really important to realize that this is a way that your reputation is forming, is how you appear on these things. And sometimes what you hear may be kind of boring, or you may not agree with it, but it's harder to hide, but you need to be able to do that. Attorneys need to be able to do that. Law students need to be able to do that. So I think there's some silver lining, and it's that, at least for my interns, I've been able to have more time to get them networking. The other unfortunate thing is the traditional networking of going to events and going to happy hours. We still do some of that stuff, but it's just so much harder. So these informal type things where we do, like the meeting we had with Amy and the meeting we're going to have with Dennis, I think are even more important than they were before, because it's the best way to kind of reach out to people. So I'm sorry I went on kind of a...
No, that's good. No, that was all good stuff. A couple of things that I heard you say that reminded me, as if anybody knows me, they know I'm a former college athlete and coach. And our coach used to always say, if you're on time, you're late. So if that hearing is at 1, you need to be on there at 12:45, because Zoom and all these platforms are always sending updates. And the way they get your attention is that the audio won't work. So then you have to download an update. And so you should be at least 15 minutes early to everything to make sure the setup looks right, that you have audio and you never get hit by saying, darn, you're too early. Or too early. No one has ever said that in ever. So that's one thing. And then I said this to Judge Hoffman and the clerks yesterday. We are a serious profession, which requires serious people to show up. And since you're in school to be a lawyer, you need to be serious. So when you show up like you want to be there. And I've always been told, dress for the job you want, not the job or the role you're in. So always make sure that you're thinking about those things. And from positive, so we have a summer clerkship program going on right now. And so we have 3 interns. And talking about reputations, one was because Maia reached out to me and said, I've got someone in undergrad that wants to kind of see what it means to be a lawyer. And so sight unseen, I said, okay, bring her on. And so she's one. And then we have a DAP Direct intern. And then I have another one from a friend that I really respect that was looking for someone. And it's amazing how much exposure they're getting. And I'm going to turn this over to Saba in a second. With this pandemic, they have had more opportunities to go to depositions, to go to hearings, to show up with Judge Hoffman and spend 30 or 40 minutes yesterday to hear from him, than you would ever get if you were at a law firm, because everybody is running around and, you know, doesn't have time to correlate their schedules. But I mean, so you need to really be taking advantage of that. But Saba, you had some points that you wanted to talk about related to the pandemic.
Thanks, Emmy. So I know we have a basketball theme for this. It's for this presentation, Slam Dunk. So I wanted to give a quote from one of my favorite basketball players of all time, Kobe Bryant, which is, every challenge, everything negative is an opportunity to rise. Yes, this is a hard situation. This is challenging and it's difficult, but this whole job is challenging. And what your employers, supervisors, everyone's looking to see is, how are you going to take this challenge and make the most of it? So Amy hit on perfectly the right points about it's an opportunity to go to more depositions, more hearings. I had a panel of federal judges where I moderated back when the pandemic first started. And that was one of the first things they recommended to young attorneys. Use this to your advantage. You don't have to worry about travel costs anymore, or any of those issues. You don't have to convince the client that it's going to be too expensive to send you. You can go and you can watch and you can learn. And there's so much to learn out there. This is also a really good opportunity to show a positive attitude, but also your resourcefulness. If you can show the attorneys that you know how to do your job in spite of any circumstances, that you can draft documents, you can get them the work that they need, you can be present, you can give clients excellent service, or provide whatever service needs to be made, and find creative ways to add value, that's going to catch their attention. Even if it's something as simple as, hey, let's have an event. Maybe we can find all the musicians at our firm and have a Memorial Day kickoff, which is what I did for some of the attorneys at my office. And we got to have a social event that was virtual. And it's not necessarily legal. We're looking to you to add value to whatever situation you're in, and a pandemic is a perfect opportunity to do that.
Can I make a comment about that? Apologize, yeah. Amy. No. I agree with that 100%. And one of the other things I would kind of amplify about that is that there is a perception of attorneys my age that everyone your age, if you're a law student of, in your 20s, is going to know a lot about technology. It's almost an expectation that you know a lot about technology. And so to the extent that you can learn about technology and use your technological skills to your advantage at this time in particular can be incredibly helpful. One example would be if you're on Zoom, there's a lot of, there's the standard way you can just share a screen, and there's, which works pretty well. But if you can use, I think it's a program called Box, but I may have the name wrong, that organizes the exhibits. Figure out all the different ways that you can maximize the use of Zoom or Teams or the different types of remote conferencing software, and how you can provide value that way, because there's the expectation you should do it, be able to do it, but you also probably can do it a lot better than someone my age. I'll give an example. Yesterday I was on a call with the Women's Advocacy Awards. I encourage all of you guys to come to that. You should all be invited. We have a great program with the Chief Justice and with the Dean of the SMU Law School on Thursday. I'd encourage everyone to come to that. I think it's Thursday or Wednesday, but Women's Advocacy Award. Camille Harrison can let you know more about it. Camille, can you post something in the chat about that? And then, sorry, but I went off topic for a second, but at that meeting, there was a question about QRT codes. Is that what they're called? QRT? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Is that the right name? QRT codes. and no one on the call, which were all people my age or older, knew how to create a QRT code. And Amanda Cervantes, who's one of my interns, she figured out while we were on our Zoom meeting how to create a QRT code, created one and sent it over to the attorney. I will tell you, everyone there was just incredibly impressed with Amanda Cervantes that day. And now I'm telling a story in front of all these people about Amanda Cervantes. So doing that kind of stuff can help you stand out in this time of pandemic. Sorry.
No, that's good. No, that's good. All right, I'm going to go to Maia and then Dennis. What is the best way for clerks to get feedback from the supervising council they're working for?
Well, first, I think it's really important that when you are turning in your project or whatever it is that your assignment, you need to let them know that, hey, I'm gonna, circle back. When is a good time for me to circle back around to get some feedback from you, or just let them know that you are desiring feedback. Schedule that appointment with them, because oftentimes the associates or partners that are giving you projects and assignments, they're busy. And so, they're like, yeah, just put that on my desk and I'll see you later. So even if it's a follow-up email or, hey, let me go to their calendar and see when they have an open spot, plug yourself in for about 15 minutes, and then go and follow up and make sure that you do get that feedback. That really shows them that you desire to improve. You understand that you may not have given the best product, or that you may have room for improvement, and they want you. I've always, in my experience, have seen that they want to give you feedback. They want you to improve. And so I think setting the expectation up front that I am going to reach back out, I'm going to circle back around to inquire about how I can improve on this project, to see if I can make any adjustments to the assignment, I think is very critical to your growth and for your reputation as well within the firm.
Dennis?
Yes, I always say submit your work with confidence and humility, and those two things can coexist.
I'm writing
Confidence.
that down. That's good.
Confidence in that I want to see that you put thought into it. You feel good about what you did. If you show up and you don't feel good about it, and I know you didn't really, then I'm questioning it too. Show up with confidence, because in the first place, we've already talked about it. You're going to put everything you've got into these assignments. This is your shot. But when I say humility, I've been doing this for 8 years, and I still submit every assignment with, please let me know how I may improve upon this draft. Or if it's for a client, please let me know how I may make this draft more helpful to you or to the client. I mean that. I still want to know how to improve the things that I am working on for those who I'm trying to help. That's what you've got to remember, is that you're there to help an attorney. You usually get an assignment from us when we're in the heat of things and we really need assistance. And so when you bring it to us, come with a mindset of, how can I keep helping you with this assignment? And Maia was absolutely right. Find a time to schedule a circle back. It can be the next day. It can be later on that afternoon. It's really important throughout this process that you read the room. It may be a little harder to do when we're working virtually, but still, when you start interacting with people, you've got to learn some emotional IQ and some interactive IQ and learn to read the room. As an attorney kind of pushing you away to say, I just don't have time to circle back right now, then don't come back every single day. Push back, sit back for a second, come back a week later and say, might you have some time? I still would like to figure out how to do this one particular thing. Be specific about it, right? Don't be general about it. Be specific. I want to improve this part of my writing. Or I saw that you changed this on the final product, and I'd like to learn why or how you do that. That puts something in their ear that says, all right, this guy or this girl wants to know something specific that I can help them with. And it is my job as a supervising attorney to help them. And it cues them back to the fact that this isn't just a futile exercise. It's part of their job to help you. And so come back to them and set up a time to do it. But it is important that you read the room. And if it's something that you have to do at the end of the summer and say, hey, I only have a week left and I'm running out of assignments, I'd like to kind of revise that document that I did for you to see if my second shot gets closer to what you were looking for. All opportunities to open dialogue and learn and do the number one thing that is your responsibility during the summer is to build relationships.
Dennis, can I tell? Oh, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, Judge. You have the floor.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
exactly.
I was just going to tell a quick funny.
Yes,
I
Your Honor.
apologize.
Yes,
I
Your
was just
Honor.
going to tell a quick funny story. I had an intern once who, you talking about turning in your project. He turned in a memo. One of the things that they'll do is write a memo for me and advising me should I grant or deny a motion. And sometimes I listen. Sometimes I'm going to rule however I'm going to rule. But the guy turned in his memo. This was a number of years ago. He turned in his memo, and I ended up ruling on it in a way that he had suggested. And after he did that, he goes, "God, Judge, I can't believe you ruled the way I suggested." And I was like, was I wrong to rule the way you suggested? Did you? That does not make me have any confidence in what you just turned in then. Anyway, just so confidence and humility, I think he lacked confidence.
Good. Dennis was speaking through that psychology degree there. With that.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. I started laying down like I was on the couch. I'm telling you. Maia, tell us that you had something to say, and then I think Saba has something to add.
I was just going to add that it is very, when Dennis was talking and he mentioned that even if it's at the end of the summer, I think that is very important. And one thing that I practiced in all of my internships is I would go sit down with every individual that I turned in an assignment with at the end of my summer to say bye and, thank them, but then to ask them for any feedback that they could give me as I went on to school and as I went on to, take on different internships. And I brought my notepad, like Dennis mentioned earlier, because I was serious about it and I really wanted to improve. And so I think showing the attitude of, I desire to grow. I know that I am not at the best in the game yet, but I want to get there and I want to learn from you. I have never met an attorney in Dallas that has not been willing to help you grow.
So Saba, there was a part there that I want you to talk about too, is that vulnerability. See, Dennis, that vulnerability.
Yes,
that,
I like
that
it.
You
I like it.
See, you like that? You see that? I read that.
I'm gonna get psychology credit for this class.
I'm telling you, you get an MCLE and some psychology credit. Talk about that vulnerability that you have to step into when you do that and say, I would like feedback.
I think the vulnerability comes from a place of a true desire to be better, because you have to expose yourself if you want to grow. And exposing yourself for being vulnerable and then getting criticism, that can hurt. And it because we all want to believe we're awesome, and we are awesome. But the only way we're going to improve at our craft is by being vulnerable about our work. So if it's hard for you to be vulnerable, what I'd recommend doing is separating your work from you. You're not your work. Your work's separate. Your work should be chopped up, reviewed, sliced, torn apart, but that's not you. Your work is separate, and your work needs to be great because it's serving a purpose of bettering someone else's life, and you want it to be better. So that's how you be vulnerable. Your paper, you present it so that it can be reviewed, but you personally are not under attack. And if you can know that early on, then getting criticism is going to be so much easier. And then one thing I want to add to all of this is there is a book that I think everyone should read. If you haven't read it yet, it is one of the best books I have ever read about how to be a good young associate, how to excel. It's called The Curmudgeon's Guide to Practicing Law. That's Curmudgeon by Mark Herman, Hermann. It's a short book, very small, but it is one of the best resources on how to get feedback, how to excel at your work, what partners or supervisors expect from you. I mean, if you can read that before you start your internships or even while you're in it, it's going to save you a lot of heartache. And I can't recommend it enough.
Okay, you 60 some people that are on here, I mean, y'all are learning stuff because I'm learning stuff. I've got notes here. So we got to keep going because we're running out of time. So obviously, tossing this to you, Judge Hoffman, they're going to reach obstacles where they don't know what to do in regard to making a decision before they give you a memo or whatever. What is some advice that you have for these students about, you know, overcoming obstacles?
And I want to comment on what Saba said that I thought was really good, and then I'll answer that question. One of the things, and I'm going to try to, you know, I have kids who are in college, and one of the things, I'm not a boomer, but they always like to say, what is a boomer? What is the term boomer?
It's just okay, boomer.
No, what's the word? Anyway,
Okay,
there's the thing
boomer.
they always say about me being a boomer. I'm not a boomer. What is it? Boomer sooner? No, that's not it either.
That's Oklahoma.
But maybe it is okay, boomer. Maybe that's it. But one of the things that people of my generation and older, a lot of times, one of the things they perceive about millennials, and I hear this again and again, and I don't necessarily think it's always true, but there is some truth to it, is that millennials have a really hard time in hearing any type of criticism. And so even if it's constructive, even if it's well-intentioned, and I will tell you is, you know, even though I do this for free and I do it because I love it, I've noticed that whenever I give any time, even mild criticism or mild suggestions, a number of interns have taken it very, very badly. They withdraw, they feel like they've been attacked. And understand that for most of the time when somebody's trying to give you criticism or suggestions, sometimes they are just mean people, but most of the time they're trying to have you improve. And so if you're the type that somebody knows that if they give you any type of feedback that you're going to be upset or you're going to, you know, disagree with them or argue with them or you know, however emotionally respond, realize that you're less likely to get that feedback, and instead they'll be giving that feedback to other people that you may not want other people to be hearing. So, you know, Bob, you know, I tried to suggest something about his memo and he got really upset. And now instead of telling Bob when he makes a mistake, I may tell all the other partners, the other judges that. So be aware of that whenever you're getting criticism, is that it's okay. It's a process. People are trying to help you in the vast majority of situations. And I think your question was about obstacles, I think.
Yeah, like practical skills about how can they overcome those obstacles. Like I know as young associates, they get to that point where Dennis was talking about, where they're trying to come to a conclusion, but they look at both sides of the law and they get stuck before they can make a decision.
You know, I don't know that I have anything better. Dennis, I thought, had a really good answer on that. One of the things I will say is that don't let obstacles stop you. There's a big difference between, I always like to say there's a difference between a good law clerk and a great law clerk. A good law clerk will just do exactly what you ask and no more and no less. A great law clerk is one that will be able to figure out the way around the obstacle and get to the answer. You know, being a attorney or being even a law clerk, it's your value, what you bring to the table is the ability to solve problems. And that isn't also always just giving the answer. The attorney or the judge may give you a project, you know, does this apply? And you say, no, it doesn't apply, but maybe you can get to where you want to go by going a different direction. You did a great job of describing that yesterday, Amy, when we had our meeting. And so I would say for obstacles, you know, it's figuring out how to get around those obstacles that makes you a great law clerk and eventually a great lawyer. I don't know if that answers the question, but
no, that was good. Dennis, they get stuck. They don't know what to do. What do they do?
Use the resources at the firm. If any firm is moving forward with a program right now, they're still going to give you the framework that you would have had in person. If you're working virtually, you'll still have a mentor. You'll likely still have a supervising attorney or two. You'll still have a section head. Those are all people that you should communicate with. As an associate, an example of problem associates run into all the time. First and second year associates, you start to get work from multiple sources. It starts to stack up on you. Deadlines are piling up. You've got to be able to communicate across the board. You can start that now. You can start that now in your summer when you start to get projects and you start to notice your deadlines are running together. Maybe an attorney didn't realize their initial deadline was too generous and they constricted, and now you're in a bind. Communicating with your supervising attorney, your mentors, the section head, making sure that they understand where you are on things, what your plan is to get it done, and offering an openness for them to help you lighten the load if that's what needs to be done is important. It always goes back to communication. If they don't know, they can't help you. And so you've got to let them know. And I'll stop at that because I see we're running out of time. But that's the major thing that really people run into in their first couple of years.
A quick one, Saba. Here's a situation that happens. Dennis kind of brought it up. The associate has, or clerk has, 2 assignments. They're both due at the same time because 2 different partners made the assignment. What is the associate? What did the clerk do? What do they do?
They talk to the partners or supervisors. You got to communicate what you have on your plate because nobody knows what's on your plate except you. So go to partner A or supervisor A and say, look, I talked to this person. They said that this assignment's due that day. This assignment's also due on this day. What do you recommend? And maybe talk to the person who assigned the project second and let them know you already have a project that was assigned to you, and let them know so that they can make an informed decision. And if both projects are urgent, then they can talk amongst each other and decide whose project gets priority. But you have to communicate that, because missing the deadline just because you didn't communicate it, that's not really going to make anybody happy.
All right, Maria, you have a deadline, you know you're not going to make it. What do you do?
You need to, the moment you know you're not going to make it, you need to immediately communicate. And hopefully, like Dennis said, you've been communicating throughout the process. So they should be somewhat familiar with you know, what's going on, your struggles with maybe the assignment. And if you realize this isn't going to be done, you want to communicate that. You want to send an email. And if you haven't heard back from them, you want to follow up in person. You want to make sure that they know that, hey, you're not going to be able to hit this deadline. Is there any way that I can push it? And I've had a situation where they were like, no, we need it. And you just need to bust your butt and make it happen. Like, you need to just do it. I mean, it's just, no matter what, it needs to get done. If they're saying, hey, we can't push this deadline, we need this, then you need to pull an all-nighter if you have to and get it to them.
Right, and that's why it's important to continue to communicate, and communicate early and often, because you don't want to have that conversation 6 hours before it's due. And yeah, so, okay, so quick round robin, definite no-nos in regard to surviving and thriving in the clerkship.
Who's first?
Judge Hoffman.
Okay.
Judge Hoffman. I'm going to kind of answer that question, but also kind of, I will tell you with the number of interns I have, I've had, you know, well over 300. I know that it can be frustrating when there's so many interns, there's just one of me. One of the things I've noticed over time is that there's certain interns that go kind of above and beyond. Like Dennis is a good example of that. I had an intern that's coming back to me the second half of the summer named Josh Clardy, who's on this call. They always would do above and beyond. And that is, I think, kind of goes across the field is that it's the interns that can see and the clerks that can see, look, I see that there's a problem and I want to help you fix it. Is there a way that I can help you fix it? That makes a great law clerk or a great intern. It's the interns that just do what you ask is great. You don't want to be remembered as one that doesn't do what they ask, but it may not make you as memorable. I do have a small number of interns over the years. You don't want to be memorable for this either, is that they come off as being very unreliable or not following instructions. I had an intern last summer. I require my interns to write a 10 to 15 page memo, and I give them 3 weeks to do it, which, you know, I think is a pretty reasonable amount of time. And she turned in a 3-page memo. And when I asked her, I said, well, why? He goes, well, my cat's been sick. Well, that's awful, your cat's sick, but most attorneys aren't going to accept that you didn't do a project you had 3 weeks on to do for that reason. And she never communicated beforehand, I can't do this. So you don't want to be remembered for those types of things, that when you're given an instruction, you don't do what you know, a good intern does what's asked, great intern goes beyond. The interns that are remembered for the bad way are the ones who don't get the job done. And so being reliable, you start to develop that reputation as soon as you start practicing, as soon as you start working as law clerks or interns. And so don't develop that type of reputation.
Maya, a no-no. What's a no-no?
Well, Judge Hoffman stole mine. Mine was to follow instructions, but I think because that is just, you just don't want to do that. But I think another one is just fail to be available. You know, if you're not available every time somebody is trying to give you an assignment because you're scared that it's piling up or you're scared that you can't get the job done, then, you know, that goes to your reputation, and they're not going to want to you know, give you any work, then they're not going to want to bring you back, and then you're going to have a bad reputation in the community. It's just a spiraling effect that happens. And so I think you want to always make sure that you are available. You're there. Yes, you're you know, some of us are, you know, are afforded with the opportunities to be at some of the most amazing firms, and we're just so excited. But at the end of the day, you're there to learn, and you're there to get work and to try to show that you are, you know, willing to do the work and that you can, once you have the direction. And so to not, you know, take the work when somebody's giving it to you, even if it's, you know, work you don't like, it's really a disservice to you.
Okay, quickly, Dennis and Saba.
Yes. So at my firm, you've got to realize that the decision at the end of the summer includes a lot of voices, a lot of associates, a lot of supervisors, staff. And so don't spend your summer prioritizing people and treating them differently because you see one person as more important to your future as the other, because you don't know who's going to be in the room when it comes time to make a decision on whether you stay or go. Treat everyone well. That's a good rule now, and Saba was saying that. Treat all your law school friends well now, because you don't know who 3 years down the line is going to be sending you the case that breaks your career open. And that goes for your 6 weeks at the firm. It's not hard to treat everyone, including the person who's pushing the cart and setting up the coffee, with absolute respect. It's not going to hurt you to do that. It will hurt you if you do it differently.
Saba?
Little different angle, but kind of similar to Dennis. Don't speak badly of others.
Ooh,
Just
yeah.
don't do it. And you may be tempted. You might have someone, a supervisor comes and just talks to you about how much he hates this person. Don't be tempted. Don't take the bait. Don't speak badly of others, because people will remember that and word travels fast. So, and you'll sleep easier knowing you don't speak badly. I sleep so much easier knowing that I just cut it off and I don't have to worry about who told what who. And your career will flourish if you can instead spread good things about praise other people and their accomplishments. Praise your staff. If your assistant was really great on a project, let the partner know. Because everyone wants to be recognized, and you play a role in making whatever workplace you're in a good workplace.
Great.
Gossip is bad currency. Don't deal in it.
Yeah. Bad currency.
Dennis has got all the great phrases today.
I'm telling you. I mean, the 50 people that are still here, still learning good stuff. So Judge Hoffman, and we're going to close out because we're over time, and we don't have any open questions, but what's your parting advice to law clerks and interns?
Let me say this, because I think this is a really tough time for law students because of this pandemic and the economic downturn, is that I've been through this before with a group of, I was a judge during the last economic downturn. Dennis was one of my interns during that time period, and I think Dennis is a perfect example of this. It may slow down your career for a lot of people. It may not go as quickly as you'd hope in a better market, but for almost everybody I've ever dealt with who has gone through that, it eventually recovers and things get better, and you'll be able to get your career back on track. And so take advantage of opportunities you have. You're going to have to work a little harder. There's going to be a little bit more competition for less spaces, but get experience, put yourself in a position that when the market comes back to normal, that you're able to do the work that needs to be done. I remember when the downturn hit last time, and nobody was almost nobody was hiring real estate associates. And everybody thought like, well, you never want to go into real estate. And 2 years later, if you had any experience in real estate, you had so many job offers, you didn't know what to do with yourself. We're going to see, I think, that same dynamic in the short run. Don't give up. Don't make bad choices. Be resilient, and you can make it through this process. It will get better.
Great. Thank you, Your Honor. Well, thank you so much for the panel. I think I learned something, so I know you all learned something. And I'm going to give the course number right now. It's also in the chat. It's 174089659. One more time, 174089659. And I also created an Amazon link. We are sponsored today by Amazon, and I sent you the link to the Curmudgeon's Guide to Practicing Law. That's so you all can get that. But thank you again so much. We really appreciate it. And everybody, please stay safe. Thank you.
Thank you, Amy.
Great.